Welcome to the deep dive. You've given us quite an intensive stack of sources today.
We have.
We're moving right into the heart of Islamic theology, drawing on the Quran, Hadith, and some really significant theological narratives.
All centered on one topic, Zina.
Right, which translates broadly to unlawful sexual immorality.
That's the one.
And our mission for you today is pretty straightforward, but it's also very serious. We want to unpack this major sin, this kabira guna. We'll look at its boundaries, its historical and even mythical origins, the punishments, and I think most importantly, the immediate worldly consequences.
And we have to start with the foundation. I mean, the sources are crystal clear on this. The supreme value in this framework is honor and chastity, is at Azmat.
Right.
And because that value is so central, it necessitates the strictest prohibitions and, of course, the most severe penalties.
The core directive you pointed out really sets the tone for everything, doesn't it? From Surah Bani Israel.
It does. Do not approach Zina. Indeed, it is an immorality and an evil way.
That word approach feels like the most part. It suggests the sin begins long before the physical act itself.
Exactly.
But before we get to prevention, let's just establish the severity. Where does this act even rank in the hierarchy of sin?
It ranks shockingly high. There's a powerful narration from H. Abdullah bin Masud.
Okay.
He relates that the Prophet Muhammad identified the three greatest sins in descending order. Number one is, of course, associating partners with Allah, shirk.
The ultimate theological error. That makes complete sense. Betrayal of the Creator.
Absolutely. Then number two, killing your own child because you fear you can't feed them. Just an absolute loss of trust in divine provision.
And then we get to number three. This is where it gets really specific.
It does. The third greatest sin identified is committing zina with a neighbor's wife.
Wow.
Think about that placement.
Yeah.
Right after polytheism and child murder.
So it's not just any act of adultery, it's the context that amplifies it.
Precisely. It's a profound breach of trust. It violates the sanctuary of your neighbor, the person you are supposed to protect. That social betrayal elevates the crime immensely.
That explains why the sources put so much weight on prevention, on not even getting close. You mentioned this concept of closing the paths.
Sadu al-Darai. Yes, it's central to the whole approach. If the final destination is forbidden, then every single road that leads there, it also has to be forbidden.
It's like building a firewall.
A spiritual firewall for the individual and for the community.
So what are some of these paths the sources warn about? I mean, what are the practical steps?
Well, it targets anything that creates temptation. So things like a lack of modesty or beperdaji, the unrestricted mixing of unrelated men and women, ikhlat mardozan.
Right.
And even behaviors designed to draw attention, displaying adornments. The source even specifically mentions the jingling of jewelry.
Jingling of jewelry. How does something that minor connect to such a major sin?
It's about understanding the psychology of temptation. The sources don't see these as isolated acts. They're kindling.
Small sparks.
Exactly. The argument is that once you allow those minor steps, the glance, the sound, that first interaction, the internal safeguards just start to weaken. It makes the final catastrophic leap exponentially easier.
And this idea of prevention, it also extends into the family, right? Specifically to parents.
Oh, absolutely. There's a very sharp warning for parents in these sources. If you delay the marriage of your adult children for no good reason,
And the children.
and because their needs aren't being met, they turn to wrong actions, the parents actually share in the burden of that sin.
So it's not just an individual sin anymore. It's a matter of familial accountability.
It is, and the sources claim this delay can lead to Allah's displeasure, even the removal of barakat, divine blessings, from the home.
Okay, let's shift to the origin. The sources present this incredible narrative about the very first act of zina and murder on earth. The story of Adam's sons, Qabil and Habil.
Cain and Abel. Yes, this narrative puts us right at the dawn of humanity.
So in the beginning, children were born as twins, a boy and a girl.
Right. And to prevent incest, the divine rule was set.
Yeah.
You couldn't marry your own twin sister. You had to marry your brother's twin.
Okay, so Qabil was born with Aklima. Habil was born with Gaza. By that rule, Habil was supposed to marry Aklima.
That was the order. But Qabil rejected it. Just
Yeah.
flat out refused.
And why?
The sources say it was simple. Aklima was more beautiful than his own twin, Gaza. He was overcome by this unlawful desire for his own sister, who was forbidden to him.
So his refusal, that's the first instance of this concept of Zina in human history.
Right.
The desire for what is forbidden.
It's the seed. Yes.
And this conflict leads to the first divine judgment.
It does. Adam told them both to present a sacrifice. Now, Kibil was a farmer. He brought the worst, most pathetic part of his harvest. Habil was a shepherd. He brought the finest, fattest animal from his flock. The difference in their offerings showed the difference in their hearts.
And the judgment was visible.
Very visible. Fire came down from the sky and consumed Habil's offering. Kabil's was left untouched.
And that's the trigger.
That's the trigger. Overwhelming jealousy, rage, hatred. He vowed to kill his brother.
I was really struck by the detail in the sources about the murder itself. He didn't even know how to do it.
No, he didn't. It had never been done. The source says Satan appeared and showed him how. Took an animal's head, placed it on one stone, and just crushed it with another.
Wow.
And using that lesson, Kabil committed the first wrongful bloodshed on Earth.
The aftermath is just as intense. The consequences were immediate.
They were. First, he was just distressed. He had no idea what to do with a human body.
There was no precedent.
None. So Allah sent 2 crows. They fought. One died, and the survivor dug a grave and buried the other. It was a divine lesson in burial.
And what happened to Kabil himself?
2 things. The sources say his face became permanently black and ugly, a visible mark of his sin. And Adam banished him. He went to the land of Aden in Yemen.
The sources then draw this chilling line connecting the 3 great sins, polytheism, murder, and zina, all back to Kabil.
He becomes the pioneer of wickedness. Iblis later convinces him that Habil's sacrifice was accepted because Habil worshipped fire. So Kabil becomes the first human to commit shirk by worshiping fire.
And here's the part that's really terrifying, the idea of an inherited spiritual burden.
This is the insight. Because he established a practice of murder and unlawful desire, the sources say that a portion of the sin from every wrongful killing and every act of zina until the day of judgment.
It goes back to him.
A piece of it goes back to him. He bears the spiritual weight of having taught humanity these sins.
And his own worldly recompense is makafat yamal. It was cyclical.
It was. He was later killed by his own blind son. The very cycle of violence he started eventually came back to consume him.
Okay, let's move from that origin story to the internal damage. There's a startling narration about what happens to a person's faith during the act.
Yes, from H. Abu Hurairah. It really stresses the internal rupture. The act is so grave that a person's faith, their iman, it actually leaves the body.
Leaves the body.
It hovers above them like a shadow, and it only returns when the act is over, which means for that period, the person is in a state of spiritual emptiness.
That really drives home why prevention, that closing of the paths, is so important.
It does.
The Prophet detailed these specific categories of what the source calls muqaddamat zina, the 4 plays of zina.
Right. It's an acknowledgement that we will all face temptation. This is about recognizing the chain reaction.
It starts with the zina of the eyes. Looking at someone you're forbidden to a non-mahram with lust.
Then the zina of the ears.
Yeah.
Listening to obscenity. Then the zina of the tongue. Inappropriate speech.
And then it escalates physically. The zina of the hands touching. And the zina of the feet walking towards the act.
And the horses summarize it perfectly. The heart desires and wishes, and the private parts either confirm or deny that desire. The goal is to cut it off at the source. The eye, the ear, the heart.
Let's turn to the prescribed legal punishments now, the had. But first, the sources mention a transitional period before these were set in stone.
That's right. Early on, the response was less severe. A married woman might be confined to her home for life. An unmarried person just scolded. But that was all superseded by the final fixed penalty.
So what are those final penalties? They depend on marital status.
Correct. If the person is unmarried, karmasan, penalty is 100 lash. Some accounts add a year of banishment or exile to that.
And if the person is married, musan.
Then the penalty is rash, stoning to death.
The sources are very explicit about the procedure, right, to maximize the deterrent effect.
Very. The guilty party is placed in a ditch dug up to their chest. A group of Muslims then stones them until they die. The public nature is key. It's meant to be a visceral warning to the entire community.
But there are clear exceptions, of course, where the penalty isn't applied.
Always. Culpability is everything. The penalty doesn't apply to minors before puberty, it doesn't apply to someone who is asleep, and it doesn't apply to a person of unsound mind, the majnun.
Okay, now let's move to the consequence that is maybe the most immediate and terrifying for the listener, the worldly recompense, makafat amal.
The action-reaction principle, the idea that the punishment starts here and now.
And it's not just a spiritual idea. The sources list tangible consequences.
They do. Sicknesses like AIDS and cancer, a hardening of the heart, the light of Islam fading from the soul, and material things like a loss of blessing barakat in your wealth and provisions.
The sources frame it as a kind of debt. There's that quote from Imam Shafi.
It's a foundational quote for understanding this. He says, Zina is a debt, a quars, and if you take that debt, it will be paid back from your own household.
Your mother, your sister, wife, or daughter.
Yes. It sets up this devastating cycle where your sin creates the potential for a parallel tragedy for those closest to you.
To make this tangible, the sources give stories. Let's look at the one that illustrates the reverse, how purity can be a shield, the story of the honest father.
Right. This was a man who lived his whole life with such chastity, he never even looked with lust at a woman he wasn't married to.
Oh, okay.
But his family falls into extreme poverty, starvation. His daughter, out of desperation, decides she has to sell her body to save them.
But when she goes out to do it,
nothing happened. Not a single person looks at her. No one pays her any attention. The takeaway is that her father's lifelong purity created a spiritual protection around her. His past good deeds shielded the family.
And we see the same idea of stopping the debt cycle in that powerful story of Masuma and her fiancé.
We do. Her fiancé arrives, ready to elope. But she stops. She hands him a letter from her recently deceased father.
And the letter is a confession.
It is. The father confesses his own past sin, how he traded months of devotion for a few hours with a forbidden woman, and how that act ruined his own parents. The letter is a plea to the fiancé. Break the cycle. Go home.
And the effect is immediate.
Instantaneous. The fiancé returns home to find his mother, who has a heart condition, has collapsed. He rushes her to the hospital, and he realizes if he'd gone through with the elopement, his mother would have died alone.
Masuma's choice provided a direct worldly protection.
It stopped the debt from being collected. His mother's life was saved.
These stories really brought home the immediacy of it all, and the sources also have a great story about divine aid for those who actively flee sin, the ascetic from Bani Israel.
Yes, the beautiful basket maker. A queen sees him, desires him, and lures him into her palace. She offers him a fortune to commit zina with her. He's trapped.
So he faces this choice, sin and lose his faith or find a way out.
So he pretends he needs to relieve himself, and they take him to the roof of the palace.
A dead end.
Seemingly. He's facing a choice between jumping to his certain death or committing zina. He chose to jump. He knew losing his body was better than losing his faith.
And the source says his motivation was pure, just fear of Allah.
Exactly. And because of that sincere fear, divine mercy intervenes. Allah sends the angel Gabriel, to catch him. He's carried gently to the ground, completely safe.
An incredible story. Now, before we wrap up, there's one last warning in the sources that feels incredibly dangerous and probably not well understood. Marital zina.
This is critical for anyone who is married. The source warns that as the day of judgment gets closer, people will commit zina with their own wives.
Which sounds like a contradiction. How is that possible?
It's not about the act of intimacy. It's about the contract, the nikah. The warning is that the marriage contract can be voided without the couple even realizing.
So, how does a marriage just dissolve like that?
If a husband or wife says or does something that Islamic law considers to nullify the nikah, this could be uttering words of disbelief, kufr. It could be pronouncing 3 divorces, 3 talaqs in one sitting, or fulfilling a conditional divorce they made in anger.
And if that happens, the contract is gone instantly.
It's dissolved, whether they meant for it to be or not. And if they continue their physical relationship after that point,
they're committing zina.
they are, with all the same spiritual consequences and potential legal penalties. It just stresses the immense caution couples need with words said in anger. The sources insist they must seek immediate counsel from a scholar to check the status of their marriage.
So this deep dive has really shown us that Zina, in this theological framework, is so much broader than just one physical act.
That's the core takeaway. It's the eyes, the hands, the heart. The foreplays are part of the sin itself. And the consequences, both worldly and in the hereafter, are presented as severe, swift, and cyclical. Protecting your honor protects your entire family line.
So with all that in mind, what does this mean for you, the listener? The source issues a final warning that feels very relevant to the world we live in.
The warning is this. If you live in a society where indecency is rampant, especially through media and entertainment, and you remain silent, if you do nothing to counter it, you become complicit.
So that leaves a final provocative thought for you to reflect on.
Given the huge emphasis on Sadhu al-Durai on closing the paths, what personal steps should you take? Not just to protect yourself, but to actively close off these pathways of temptation within your own sphere of influence for the generations that will come after you.
A vital question for reflection. Thank you for joining us on this very deep and informative dive. We'll see you next time.